Scooter heads, welcome to the Electric Scooter Podcast, episode 40. Can you believe it? 40 episodes already. Actually more if you count the in-betweenies. But today, it's going to be kind of a massive news session going on here. Electric Scooter Podcast news, but it's broken up into two spots. First spot will be just news from all over the world, and then we're going to talk about big box retailers in the scooter business. It's true. So get ready, because we're about to take off.
Electric Podcast Scooter News. Dagwood here to bring to you. Electric Podcast Scooter News. Dagwood here to bring to you.
First item in the news is the MicroMobility America conference will take place in San Francisco, California on Thursday, September 23rd. And the price for one day, let me tell you what you get first. Access to resources. Wow. So they'll have drinking fountains there and bathrooms, workshops, and talks with over 50 experts from the PEV industry. Scooters are part of that. And connect with over 500 brands and startups. Wow, you can watch a lot of commercials. Hey, I joke around because I'm a little cynical. Actually, I'm sure it would be a great time. They're going to announce the programming, the schedule, I don't know, between now and September 23rd. Okay, I'm recording this near the end of September, so it might actually be over by the time this podcast comes out. Specific programming schedule will be announced, space is limited, and admission prices will increase as the events draw closer. So, I know that's the question, right? To get in to the MicroMobility America conference, you will open your pockets, pull out your wallet, or open your Gucci purse or whatever you're carrying, and fork over $845. Of course, there's all kinds of discounts. I saw the Electric Scooter Guide has a 15% discount on what they're calling a micro pass ticket. And then I saw on the webpage, I actually saw it for 400 something bucks if you go to the MicroMobility America webpage. I don't know. Seems like a lot of money. The last time it was held was 2019. January 31st, to be specific. Chuck Temple, Scooter God, founder of the Electric Scooter Guide, has a webpage, and he has listed all the different briefings that he attended and what they're about if you really want to get deep into it. He said there was about 1,000 people. And again, 2019 is not an indication of what will happen in 2021. Some of the highlights or the points that he brought up were that micromobility is the fastest technology in history to ever reach 500 million users. The fastest company in history to reach. What did I say? Meet? Yeah, to reach and meet. To meet $1 billion valuation is Bird. Remember we talked about Ashton Kutcher? Star of that 70 show and Dude, Where's My Car? He's a venture capitalist heavily invested in Bird. Go back and listen to that podcast. I think it was episode 38. At the last conference, they put out the word that populations are moving from rural to urban areas, but I just read a study that I'll bring up that says the opposite. People are moving from urban to rural areas. But what is true is that urban area infrastructure is being strained. And micromobility would definitely have a huge impact on improving that situation. Case in point, In Paris, France, they have put a speed limit of 18 miles per hour, 30 kilometers an hour, in a drive to improve the environment, cut accidents, reduce noise, and reduce pollution. 59% of Parisians are in favor of the measure, but obviously some businesses are against it. They already started, and it was pushed by their mayor, Anne Hidalgo. There's a couple traffic lanes and routes. Do you say routes? Do you say routes? I say Route 66. That are going to be exempt. The Champs-Élysées, of course, and Boulevard Préférique. Champs-Élysées would be 50, the latter 70 kilometers an hour. There's other parts of Europe, too, that are doing the same thing. Spain, the capital of Brussels. The Belgian capital of Brussels. It's being introduced so Parisians can get used to it during a period of lighter summer holiday traffic, kind of easing into it, I guess. They're also limiting street parking bays. They're cutting it in half. You'll have a harder time finding parking. But most vehicles are expected to be banned from the entire city center by next year. So what does that got to do with scooters? Well, they are increasing the cycle lanes, bike lanes. They've redesigned a lot of the streets to make them more pedestrian friendly. And believe me, you're going to see more scooters, more EUCs, that's electric unicycles, e-bikes, all that kind of thing. So that is what is going on in Paris. But what about Finland, you may ask? What is happening in Finland? Well, shared e-scooters, which again, that's a common way to say rental scooters in Helsinki, have a speed limit between midnight and 5 a.m. on weekends. Now, to my knowledge, it's not a law. These companies got together, Voi, V-O-I, T-I-E-R, Tier, and Lime. They have rental scooter industries in Helsinki, and they are the ones that are pushing it and enacting it. They say because doctors in Helsinki wanted e-scooters to be banned at night because they had a bunch of accidents. The Finland transport minister said a full ban would be too stringent. The number of accidents has not decreased, and we are aware that e-scooter accidents burden healthcare too much. Again, this is during the time of COVID. This came out September 2021. It should be noted that they are going to consider a little tighter rules, effective supervision, technical solutions, and other restrictions. So the speed limit of 15 kilometers an hour is between midnight and 5 a.m. on weekends. You know, I just don't see limiting the scooter speeds to be effective. I don't know. Are people in Finland going to follow that? They're certainly different from people in America if if they think people are going to look at their watch and go, okay, it's midnight now, let me slow her down to 15 kilometers an hour. I don't know. Maybe the Finns, the Finland people, the good people of Finland, maybe they follow the rules. Maybe they're very fastidious about rule following. I certainly would not see it not only in America, but definitely not in Vegas. Las Vegas, Nevada, where the Scooter Dome is located and where this podcast is broadcasting from currently. A guy from Tier, T-I-E-R, I guess they're like Lime and Bird, a big scooter rental company. One of their spokespersons said, "We're happy that the entire micromobility industry in Finland was able to support us in this and agree on a set of common standards across the country." What? That's just ridiculous. It sounds like the company is trying to get measures or rules or regulations put through before the government comes up with their own rules. So are they happy that the government is helping them set common standards? I don't know. Maybe they are. A Voice spokesman said safety was the firm's first priority, but did not want a ban. I think their first priority is money, but they're probably not going to say that in an interview. They went on to say, to help solve the urgent problem of drunk riding, we are willing to try night shutdowns. However, we feel that banning e-scooter riding at night is not the best way to solve irresponsible behavior in the long term. Well, of course not. It's not going to do anything. If somebody chooses to drink and drive or drink and ride or drink and scoot, they're going to do it. They're just going to do it. I mean, everybody knows it's wrong. You can get hurt. You can hurt other people. On an e-scooter, you're probably going to hurt yourself. So it's less dangerous, I would say, than in a car. Cars are heavier, and when you hit somebody on one, it is going to hurt worse than a scooter. But remember in Paris a couple episodes back, I talked about there was a nurse, and she was riding with a friend on her scooter, which kind of doubled the weight, and she hit an Italian tourist and killed the tourist. And it was kind of a scooter hit and run because she kept going. They caught up to her later, I guess. So from April to July of 2021, just Voi alone, the rental scooter company Voi, VOI, in Helsinki, scooter trips only on Voi scooters increased 800% from April to July compared with 2020. And April to July, I would think in Finland, it's got to be a cold country. Maybe June, July, August are prime scooting months. The temporary spike in accidents, if it went up, ridership went up 800%, it just seems natural that you're going to have more accidents just going by the numbers alone. If you have 800% increase in ridership, whatever the accident number is going to go up. Maybe it went up by less than 800%, which would, in my mind, be a decrease. But let's stop and compare. This is semi-rhetorical. Let's stop and compare the policy in Paris where they're making the cars slow down to provide more room for the electric vehicles. Think about that for a second. Helsinki is saying, we're going to slow down the electric vehicles. But what systems do we have in place to control speed? Aren't they all designed for motorcycles and automobiles and buses and that kind of thing? The police have radar guns or whatever it is they're using nowadays to measure speed. I propose that the Paris solution is much preferable to the Helsinki solution, which to me isn't a solution. I say lower the automobile or the road speed limits for cars, trucks, vans, buses, so that scooters can do whatever they want. Let them go as fast as they want. So what? They're weaving in and out of traffic. They're going up and down curbs. Whatever, as long as they're avoiding people, give them a bike lane. They might be whizzing by bikes and other PEVs, but so what? That's my opinion. It seems to me to make way more sense because how are you going to control the speed on electric scooters if you're a police officer or you're involved in handing out traffic citations in Finland? What are you going to do? I don't know. Guy looks like he's going too fast. Wave him over and talk to him. He's drunk. It's after midnight on a weekend. He might not be drunk. He or she. They could be drunk, maybe not drunk. Slow down the cars. Now that makes a lot more sense because cars can do a lot more damage to other people. The scooter people, the scooter heads, are most likely going to hurt themselves. Yes, it is possible you could crash a scooter into a baby carriage, but what's a baby carriage doing in the bike lane after midnight on a Friday anyway? That's why I say semi-rhetorical.
I've got a few introductions that I want to make very quickly before I start my remarks. First of all, I think that by the end of his tenure, we're going to know that
Dagwood Straits,
one of the finest
podcasters
we've ever had. So please give him a big round of applause.
Thanks, Barry. Kind of you to say. Unlike previous podcasts, I did not forget what I said early in the podcast when we were talking about the American MicroMobility Conference to be held September 23rd in San Francisco for the meager fee of $800 that Americans are not moving from the country to the city. I know on the webpage and at the last conference in 2019, they were saying everybody is moving from the countryside to the city and the infrastructures can't handle it. And it's true, the infrastructure cannot handle it, and it needs to be reworked. Joe Biden has a giant new multi-trillion-dollar plan, and I could not get any government official to let me know, and then I let you know whether it's going into micromobility, at least a small portion of it. I mean, come on, it needs to be done. So in America, we have a research center called the Pew Research Center, PEW. And you can look them up. They are a very, very reliable source of information. It's what they do for a living. And here's what they said. Americans today are more likely than they were in 2019, pre-COVID, to express a preference for living in a community where houses are larger and farther apart, but schools, stores, and restaurants are several miles away. I wouldn't say but school. I would say and schools, stores, and restaurants are several miles away. Americans still want to live in bigger houses that are farther apart from each other, and they don't mind driving, is my take on that quote from the Pew Research Center. There's been a corresponding drop, of course, in the amount of people saying they'd like to live somewhere with smaller houses that are closer together. And schools, stores, and restaurants, of course, would be within walking distance. A typical scooterhead, maybe a modern urban millennial scooterhead, would like to live in a downtown area where you can just hop on your scooter and get there quick. You don't use much gas. You're not that frustrated. And boom, you're at work. You're at school. You're at your destination quickly with a smile on your face. You're not worried about parking. And the cost of fuel was really small enough as to be insignificant. Today, 6 in 10 U.S. adults, again, according to Pew Research, so 60%, would prefer to live in a community with larger homes. So that means 40% prefer a community with smaller houses that are closer together with schools, stores, and restaurants within walking distance. So the point of all this is the impact on electric scooters and the electric scooter lifestyle. You would think it's more appropriate for people living in an urban area with smaller houses or condominiums or apartments that are close to each other. Again, this research, along with every disposable fact about electric scooter, doesn't mention people who ride scooters for fun. And that's what this podcast is all about. That's why I'm talking to you. I assume that's why you're listening. We try to keep it fun a little bit, and it's all about fun. It's not just statistics and reviews of specific scooters and that kind of thing. It's about the scooter lifestyle. So just because people are moving from outside of downtown areas, which I understand, if you're in a place especially that was nailed by COVID and your neighbors are getting sick and people close to you are no longer in your life, hey, I want to get out in the middle of the countryside. But the countryside is also a good place to ride a scooter. And that kind of dictates what type of scooter you are riding, whether you're going to have an off-road scooter like the Wolf Warrior with knobby tires, or you're going to have a long-distance scooter like the eMove Cruiser, or you're going to have a little teeny one like the Levy or the Unagi that you're going to pack onto a train or a bus. Our last item in the news, before we get to the big box retailers who sell electric scooters, comes from England, to be specific, north of London. And I always, seems like, have bad things to say about rental scooter companies and rental scooters in general. So to balance it out a little bit, here is a good story about a company called DOTT, D-O-T-T. There are 3 different scooter companies in London, and this company DOTT opened up its warehouse in North London to let reporters in and see what's going on there. To be honest, I do try to be unbiased. It is possible that this entire story is propaganda and a sales pitch that's for the company. I know if you have a large corporation, you're going to hire people and have people write stories, and it's going to work its way into the newspapers and online. So with that caveat, these guys are based in Haringey, Haringey. They have about 800 e-scooters and about 250 different parking spots that have been allocated to them by Transport for London. And different boroughs that are taking part in the study that they're doing. So far, London has had about 60,000 journeys on these DOTT e-scooters. And assuming an average of around 400 across 90 days since they started, that represents just under 2 journeys per scooter per day, which seems to me to be super low. And you'll find out later that they anticipate these scooters to last 4 years, whereas I read a study from the United States in the state of North Carolina where one of the major companies in the U.S. estimates, I think 66 days, I think it was, the study came up with before somebody threw it in a lake or broke it or left it somewhere and got smashed. So the scooters are built to last a lot longer than 2 months. But this company, DOTT, I believe, is a little optimistic, thinking their scooters are going to last 4 years. I hope they do. Privately owned scooters certainly should last 4 years. But remember, we are talking 2 scooter journeys per day. So I would call that, for a rental scooter, pretty mild use. And each ride averaged 21 minutes per ride, which is good to hear because for a commuter, that's a relatively long time, suggesting that the trips aren't just replacing walking someone who wanted to go a couple minutes down the road to the next pub, but it's a significant distance. They may have been commuting on these DOTT scooters. 13% of the trips are on daily passes. So that's also good news to me. 13%, I don't know. So, in other words, it's not just people paying one time to just go a short ride. Actually, 87% of the time it is, but 13% is people renting it by day or longer. Of all the journeys during the survey, the 90 days, 94% ended in the correct spot where they were supposed to be parked. That's pretty awesome. Again, this is not America. This is not Las Vegas, obviously. So at their warehouse in Haringey, they're seeing about 10 scooters per day coming in for service, which, that seems to me pretty decent out of 800 scooters. It could be just minor tweaking and it's a pretty low number. But again, those numbers are kind of inflated because the vehicles were all brand new and they were using the latest model. As I mentioned earlier, they're expecting to get up to 4 years of life. And I can kind of see that if they're only being ridden twice per day. An additional community service that they are performing is there used to be a company called Mobikes, and they pulled out of London, leaving all their bikes wherever they were on the spot. So as a community service, London is going around picking them up and disposing of them. It says disposing them responsibly. I hope they are giving people the opportunity to keep using them, sell them cheap, turn them around. So here's the cool part of the story, in my opinion. They're talking to a company called SeeSense, SeeSense, and they make movement sensors. And they're going to use that technology to detect problems where the riders make sudden speed changes. They had to go around something or something happened that made them slow down real quick or weave around something. And taking the data to adjust a geofence that they will operate. And in the future, they say they're going to come out with an e-bike. Maybe they paint those old Mobikes that they're picking up and put a little grease into them and send them out. Nah, I doubt it. But the bikes are going to come out at the end of this year, 2021.
The Electric Scooter Podcast. It's happening now.
Well, that's rather stating the obvious, isn't it? You're listening to a podcast and a song comes on. The podcast is happening now. Okay, that gives you virtually zero information. It's just a segue to whatever we're moving on to next. And in this case, I was going to talk about big box retailers selling scooters. But we're coming up on a half an hour already, and I do try to keep these podcasts around a half an hour, so we're just going to make that into a separate podcast so that we don't give it short shrift. We give it the time it deserves. So my apologies if you saw big box retailer, or you heard me say it at the beginning of the podcast and you just thought, wow, that's the section that I want to hear. That's the topic that excites me. I'm sorry, man. If you work for Target, Walmart, Best Buy, I tell you what, I will do that in a separate podcast because I think it's worth listening to. It's interesting, and there are a few points that I would like to make. So I apologize again that we're not going to get to that segment of the podcast, but we'll do it next time. And instead of just coasting over it real quick and glossing over the information, we'll get into it. We'll talk about it. So, until next time, keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down.